Welcome back to the Between Sundays podcast, a Christian podcast that explores the gospel message and encourages holding God's word close to your heart between Sundays. It's Nathan, it's Ryland. We're back together, looking at 1 Samuel chapter 24. And you'll be like, hey, that's a kind of weird spot to just drop us off at. Don't worry. Here in just a second, Ryland has got a lot of background knowledge that he's going to give you guys to kind of catch you up to where we are in 1 Samuel. But the thought today is who's fighting our battles, and we're gonna spend some time today discussing both sides of that coin.
Yeah, and so like Nathan mentioned, I spent a lot of time diving into the background knowledge. Nathan and I, we've been through the book of 1 Samuel on our own time, and we were trying to figure out where to go next with the Between Sundays podcast, and this is kind of where we landed. So today we're going to be reading about two main guys, Saul and David. Saul was the first ever. By the way, Nathan, if you hear anything and you no, that's not right, you let me know.
I got you.
But Saul was the first ever king of Israel. He was elected by the people, and he was elected primarily based on his looks and stature and his ego. Mm-hmm. But he continued to disobey the Lord and had a hardened heart. And it was because of this God rejected him as king. And I believe it's in 1 Samuel where it talks about the Spirit of the Lord left Saul and entered David. And then David was the second ever king of Israel, followed up Saul. David was anointed by God, not by the people of Israel. Mm-hmm. It was not yet at this point in the story, and it kind of gets tricky here because he was the king in spirit, but he was not physically the king yet. Like he did not hold the title of king yet. Yeah. Because it was literally earlier before chapter 24 where it says the Spirit of the Lord left Saul. But David also did numerous things that made him very popular among the Israelites. He defeated Goliath when Saul's army couldn't. Saul's daughter, I believe, fell in love with David. Mm-hmm. And Saul's brother or son or something like that, I think Jonathan was his son was a really big David guy. So Saul could kind of see the writing on the wall here of, hey, this David guy is coming for my spot. I know it, the Lord knows it, but none of the other Israelites know it. And so he kind of he felt like he had to do something about it. Yeah. And so Nathan and I, we were prepping for this episode, and he was saying, and if you're familiar with the book of 1 Samuel, you know that Saul tried to kill David numerous times. And me and Nathan were like, well, this is the third or fourth time? No, what we're going to be reading today is the seventh time that Saul has tried to kill David in 24 chapters. He's hurled spears, and he's hired executioners, and he's tried to take matters into his own hands. But he's 0 for 6 up to this point, and we're going to read about his seventh attempt today and kind of how David retaliated. Yeah.
You mentioned something talking about Saul, like how he came to power. And if you know anything about Israel, you know that they are looking for a warrior to lead them. They're looking for someone who's mighty. And that's kind of why they reject Jesus as the Messiah. So it kind of makes sense that Saul became ruler because he was handsome and he was a warrior and he could fight. And so it just makes sense that he came to be king there.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's all I got. Hope I didn't bore anybody off. Thank you for sticking with it. And now we're going to get into our real good points here.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 24, looking at verses 12 through 15. I'll give you a second to turn there. Starting in verse 12, it says, "The Lord judge between me and thee, and the Lord avenge me of thee, but mine hand shall not be upon thee. As saith the proverb of the ancients, wickedness proceedeth from the wicked, but mine hand shall not be upon thee. After whom is the king of Israel come out? After whom dost thou pursue? After a dead dog? After a flea? The Lord therefore be judge, and judge between me and thee, and see, and plead my cause, and deliver me out of thine hand." So, really and truly, we see David here is talking to Saul to... I don't know. I don't know how David felt in this moment. I can only assume, but if someone has come after me now 7 times trying to kill me, I'm going to try to figure out why they're so angry with me. Like, what's going on to make them so mad about whatever it is I'm doing? right? And so you see that David is not taking matters into his own hands. He's not trying to come up to Saul and say, you know what, you want to fight me, let's fight. He says, look, the Lord's going to judge between me and you. The Lord's going to say, look, this is who I want to be king. You were king. You didn't do what I asked you to do. This is why David's here now, right? So he says no to personal revenge. No, straight up just no to personal revenge. He does not want any part of it. He says instead, I'm going to let the Lord be the final judge.
Yeah, absolutely. I had it as don't try to draw a line that has already been drawn. Because, guys, God has already drawn the lines of what's right and wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that was the main asset that David had. That he knew that the line had already been drawn, right? David didn't have to draw his own line and try to stay behind that line. No, all he had to do was try to stay behind the line that God had already set up.
Yeah, right. And again, like there's value in knowing what the word says, right? If the word says to do something and we do the exact opposite, we're drawing lines. We're the ones drawing the line here of, hey, well, I know the word says to do this, but I'm going to take it one step further and do this instead. We're going to get ourselves into a heap of trouble here, right? It would have been, like I said, it would have been really easy for David to say, hey, I'm going to take this into my own hands. This is 7 times now. 7 times. I'm going to go after you, and I'm going to ask you why you're so angry with me. But he doesn't. Instead, he says, I'm going to hide behind the Lord and let the Lord take care of this.
Absolutely. And it's just something that we can take and apply instantly to our life, right? Because everybody is, I assume everybody listening is dealing with something, right? Dealing with someone in their life. If you're not, great, that's awesome. But almost everybody has that one person or group of people that they bicker with, or they argue with, or they disagree with a lot, right? Especially in the year 2026, where everything is so well, you have to be this side or the other, and you can't find middle ground, and if you are on opposite sides, you have to disagree with each other.
Yeah.
And so it's just so important of not drawing the line of vengeance, right? Like Nathan said, David had no interest in taking vengeance against Saul. He just was making sure that he was behind the line that God had already drew, because he knew that Saul had way past the line that God had already set up. So he was like, hey, I know that Saul's past that line. God's going to deal with him. As long as I'm behind this line, I'm good.
Yeah, for sure. Right? And I mean, it's about really just being humble, right? And we find that later on in this section of verses here that David was very humble with his thoughts about himself. But if you're not willing to be humble and be a servant of the Lord, there's really no help there, because you're gonna take matters into your own hand.
Yeah. Before we move on, I thought it was really interesting how David was so confident in the Lord's ability to judge between the two of them. He says, "But my hand will never be against you." It will never be against you. He is so confident that the Lord is going to come between the two and squash that beef and judge between what's right and what's wrong, right? We can't have this half-hearted mindset, right? We've talked about that in the book of James before, of, hey, don't be double-minded in your ways. You can't stay partially behind the line that God has already drawn and yet try to draw your own line, and you can't believe that God's going to be the judge between you and another person, or you in this situation, and you try to be your own judge as well. It's hey, you've got to be all in on the Lord being your judge and following the Lord's lines that he's already drawn. Absolutely.
I didn't even realize that. That's really good. He says that his hand will never come upon him. Yeah, that's crazy. Looking at as we're moving down, I think Ryland, you had a point about verse 13, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my Bible, and I think Nathan's Bible, says wickedness comes from evil people, from wicked people. I just did a little spin off of that for my notes, just that from evildoers come evil deeds, right?
Yeah.
David uses a proverb here as kind of like a mirror, a gut check, spiritual checkup, whatever you want to call it. And he just realizes, again, that if you take vengeance in a wicked way, then your heart is just as bad as the likes of people like Saul or people of the sort, right?
Yeah. Right. And again, it doesn't say that wickedness, my Bible says wickedness is produced from the wicked. It doesn't say that wickedness is produced from people who do the right thing. Right? We know as Christians that if we do the things that we're supposed to do, good things will eventually come from them. Notice that I didn't say they will 100% always right then come out, right? Those good things. But if you do the things that the Lord asks you to do, eventually good things will come back to you, right? You're going to find that, oh, well, the Lord is going to reward your faithfulness to him with whatever it is, right? So if David had been on the flip side here and said, you know what, Saul, I'm just going to punch you in the face. You've chased me down all this much time. I'm just going to punch you in the face. That's what I'm going to do. I wholeheartedly believe that David might have had to suffer some consequences. Not might have, he would have had to suffer some consequences because he stepped outside of those lines. We just talked about those lines that the Lord had drawn, and now he is acting like a wicked person.
Absolutely. It's just the stark contrast, right, of from evildoers come evil deeds, but from good, righteous people who try come righteous things, right?
Yeah.
I also, I saw this when I was scrolling on TikTok or Instagram the other day, and it was it caught my eye, and it was, someone said, if someone murders a murderer, the number of murderers on earth remains. Had David killed Saul, you might think, well, there's one less unrighteous person in the world. Well, no, David killed Saul, so David's now an unrighteous person because he crossed that line, right? Yep. And so don't just become unrighteous and harden your heart to, quote-unquote, get back at someone. And also don't let someone else's unrighteous things cause your unrighteous things.
Yeah, right. And if you notice, right, look at the end of verse 12 and the end of verse 13, right? They say the exact same thing. At least in my Bible, they do. Verse 12 ends with, but mine hand shall not be upon thee. Verse 13 also ends with, but my hand shall not be upon thee. David has said, look, wickedness comes from wicked people, but my hand's not going to come upon you, right? I'm not going to lay a hand on you. I'm not going to do anything to you, Saul. So he's telling Saul, I'm letting the Lord fight this one. The Lord's going to judge this one.
Absolutely. It's just so dumb to try to take an act of revenge on someone, I feel like, because we as Christians are called to forgive as Christ first forgave us, right? Bad attitudes are viruses. I can't help but think of it. We make sports analogies all the time on this podcast, but I think of it like a really gritty, like a really gritty sports game, whatever sport you want to say, but I'll say basketball because I'm an athlete, or because I'm a basketball player. Say you're playing a team and they're much more physical than you, and they're beating you around and they're bruising you up, and eventually you're going to want to bump them harder, right? Or you're going to want to, hey, this guy's going up for layup, I'm going to want to foul him really hard. To whatever, send a message, assert your dominance, whatever. But we as Christians are called to, in those scenarios when other people are bumping us and bruising us and saying harmful things to us or whatever, we're not called to, hey, go give them a taste of their own medicine. No, that's not what the Lord calls us to do. He's just saying, hey, de-escalate, and just let me handle it, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about de-escalation here in just a moment, but
yeah, again, I think that's probably the, I won't say number one, but probably top 5 thing that most Christians struggle with is somebody will come against them and their immediate reaction is, well, I got to go against them now, right? Oh, well, Ryland does me wrong. I got to pay it back. I got to get him back for whatever he did wrong to me. Somebody cuts me off in traffic. Oh, I got to cut them off as soon as I can. No, Ryland just talked about it. We're not called to do any of that. We're called to forgive as Christ forgave us. And if you ever think that, oh, well, I don't know how Christ forgave me. He died for your sins. That's how he forgave you, right? He died in place of you for your sins. So that's how he forgave you. So that's the model for our forgiveness.
Absolutely.
As we look down into verse 14, I'll read it again. It says, after whom is the king of Israel come out? After whom dost thou pursue? After a dead dog, after a flea. Here's that humility that I had mentioned just a little bit ago, right? David says, look, are you chasing after me? Right? And he's almost asking him, I wonder if David kind of was a little snarky here. I don't know. The way it kind of reads, it kind of feels that way to me. That he was like, hey, are you chasing after me? Because all I am is a dead dog and a flea. I am nothing compared to you, right? In comparison to what you are, right? Talking to Saul here.
Yeah.
Of the king of Israel. I am nothing in comparison to you. I'm just a warrior who killed this guy, who killed Goliath at one point.
Yeah, I mean, he literally just compares himself to a flea, right? It doesn't get much smaller than a flea. So there's just so much value in playing small, right? Like Saul probably expected David to like pound his chest and, stand up and stretch and then get ready to fight him, right? Because I feel like that's what a lot of people do nowadays, right? They try to get in your head, they try to get under your skin, and they just want to see you react because that's what they get their enjoyment out of, right? I'll go back to the gritty basketball game analogy, right? Teams are physical to try to get a reaction out of you, to try to get you to slam the ball on the ground and get a technical foul, or punch somebody in the throat and get a flagrant foul and get ejected, right? That's what they do it for. They don't do it for necessarily the enjoyment because it probably hurts them to bump you too, right? But they do it to get a reaction out of you, right? But David is showing Saul that there's no point in a tiny little flea attacking a big army that Saul already has. Again, because Saul is still physically the king of Israel, and so he has the army of Israel. But David knows that he stands no chance, but also, hey, I'm going to let the Lord fight this battle.
Yeah, right. And I just wrote down that's insane amounts of humility. I don't think there's anybody that's probably living today that has that much humility about them to be like, hey, one of the greatest armies of the time is coming against me. And I'm going to stand here and say, why are you I'm nothing in comparison to you. I am nothing in comparison to whatever it is. And I'm just going to let the Lord fight it, right? With the title of this episode, if it's up to me, is going to be who fights your battles. I think that's kind of what we decided on.
Yeah.
David here is saying, look, I'm letting the Lord fight. I'm going to let the Lord fight. He said it the entire time, right? We find, after each of these times, right? Yes, David ran from Saul, but also David didn't try to fight Saul back. He said, all of these different times that I'm going to let the Lord fight this battle. I'm going to let the Lord fight this battle. But he never said it to Saul until right here. He tells Saul, the Lord's fighting this battle for me. It's not going to be me fighting you.
Absolutely. I mean, Saul was the embodiment of dominance, right? We talked about how he was elected because of his stature and because of his image and because of his looks or whatever. That's why he was elected by the people. But he was built on his image and was doing literally everything to protect his face. Literally, he's tried to kill David now 7 times because David is trying to take over. Well, David wasn't really trying to take over his job, but David is now in line to be the next king of Israel. And Saul's doing everything in his power to prevent that from happening. Because, David's going to show him up as a king just because he's doing the righteous things, right? Mm-hmm. I just had it that God cannot be your judge unless you confess that you can't judge yourself, right? It's one judge per case. We talked about it. Can't be double-minded. Can't try to draw the line where a line's already been drawn. Just one judge per case.
Yeah. Well, I think about it like this. If you get a speeding ticket and you have to go to court for that speeding ticket, you're going to see one judge. Like Ryland just said, you're going to see one judge. You're not going to see 14 of them, and they all have to come together to try to get to one punishment for you or whatever it is. That one judge says, hey, look, you were going this fast over the speed limit. You now have to go to driving school, right? That's that judge's decision. If we let the Lord be the judge of each of our situations and all that stuff, we know that the decision that's made is going to be a righteous and a holy decision.
Yeah. And I think also we shouldn't be afraid to kind of take a little bit of action. And I got to be careful because don't take action with the wrong state of mind or with the wrong position of your heart, right? Jesus calls us to judge certain scenarios with the righteous judgment, right? So, whatever. If you see somebody saying hurtful things that you maybe say, hey, like whatever, what would Jesus think of this? Hey, Jesus actually says XYZ, but don't say cuss words back just because someone said a cuss word at you. There's a difference.
Right. At the time we're recording this, I've got 3 What Would Jesus Do bracelets on. So I think I've got a pretty good response there of, hey, in these situations, look at my wrist and say, what would Jesus do in this, right? What would Jesus do during this situation right here? And if my action is not going to be something that Jesus would do, I got to change it. I got to change whatever it is I was going to do.
Yeah. I literally just this morning read the crucifixion story again in Matthew chapter 27, and Jesus he didn't go down swinging, right? He literally accepted everything that happened.
Yep.
They people chose Barabbas. They beat him. They crucified him, and they mocked him, and they spit on him, and whatever. But he didn't really fight back, and that's the type of humility we need to have, right?
Absolutely.
Again, what would Jesus do? How would Jesus judge this scenario? Simple as that, really.
All things that we need to get better at considering, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, just honing in our ego.
Yeah. And so the last thing that really I wanted to look at was that even though Saul had been hunting David, it's like I don't deer hunt or anything, but I got friends that deer hunt, and they will be tracking deers for 2-3 years, right? They'll be like, oh, well, I'm gonna wait a couple years on this deer to get a little bigger, and then he's mine. So Saul had been hunting David. David does not hold anything against Saul. He just says, you know what? The Lord's fighting this. We've talked about it the entire time. The Lord's going to fight this battle for me. Again, David had probably every opportunity to say, you know what? Saul, you're dead. Next time I see you, you're dead. But he didn't. He chose to not hold anything against Saul. And I think it's kind of important because, how we know that David's going to eventually become king of Israel. How hard would it be to rule a group of people if you go in and wipe out their king? They're going to immediately rise up against you and say, we don't want you. You wiped out our king.
Yeah. I like how you said, he didn't hold it against him because he knew that the Lord would handle it, right? I feel like some people, well, sure, I didn't take action, but I still hate them inside. Mm-hmm. Well, no, that's murder in the heart, right? I believe there's a verse in the Bible that talks about murder in the heart. Maybe?
I think so. I can't remember what it is right off the top of my head.
But also there's another verse where it talks about, you can commit sins in your heart as well, right? So just because I didn't punch Nathan in the face, but I still hold a grudge against him, and he invites me to something and I say no because I still hate him, that's a sin in and of itself, right? And so it's important that we let the Lord judge what happens and just kind of flush it, right? Again, showing that forgiveness, showing that grace and love and mercy that Christ first showed us.
Absolutely. Right. Again, how different is the situation if David, on the third time of Saul trying to hurt him, says, you know what, Saul, I'm going to punch you in the face, dude. But he never gets the chance to. It reads a whole lot different because now Saul is harboring this hatred David is harboring this hatred towards Saul in his heart. And all of these situations, right? The Lord's not going to fight that battle for him because he's directly sinning against the Lord by holding on to some hate for somebody.
Yeah. I want to say it was earlier, and again, you might have to, I didn't take a note on this, but wasn't it earlier in this book where Saul tried to kill David and didn't work, and maybe the spear or whatever instrument that Saul tried to use to kill David was right near David's side, and one of David's accomplices was like, hey, we can go kill him right now because we have this now. We can go kill him right now. And he's like, well, no, there's no point. Yeah. And so that's the kind of mindset we should have, right? Have the forgiveness like David mindset. Have the forgiveness like Christ mindset of just because they wronged me doesn't mean I have to wrong them back. Because they wronged me, I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to hope they find Jesus, and I hope they repent of their wrongdoings. But I'm not gonna go swing back at them.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I had kind of forgot about that. But yeah, his buddy.
It came to mind.
Yeah, his buddy was like, hey, well, we can go kill him. It's like, no, there's no point in doing that. I mean.
Right.
So, I don't know. It's also a look at, who are the company you're keeping around you. Are they influencing you to do dumb things, or are you going to be the leader there and say, look, there's no point in going against the Lord?
Absolutely. That's all I've got. So
yeah, that's all I've got. This has been good. I've really enjoyed this. I hope you've gotten something from it.
I was telling Nathan before this, I was really looking forward to this. It was yesterday. I was doing some stuff, and I was like, man, I cannot wait to record tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. Just
absolutely
having the excitement to read the Bible and study the Word, and I hope we instill some of that in you guys listening. And go out and read this book on your own. Go out and read whatever the story of David and Saul, there's a lot more to unpack, especially with Saul.
Absolutely.
He's pretty crazy. He does a lot of crazy things in this chapter. So just go study the Word for yourself. Have that relationship with Christ yourself.
Absolutely. That's, like Ryland said, that's the whole end goal here, is for you to want to go read it for yourself. So we hope that you have learned something. We hope that we have piqued an interest in the book of 1 Samuel. But hey, there's also this book of 2 Samuel, so go read that one after you get done with it. But again, we hope that you've learned something. We hope that you can take something from this, share this with a friend. Just keep listening, but we will talk to y'all next time. And just remember, hell's hot, heaven's not. See ya.